All right, here we go. This is another mainly geometry nodes lesson, but we're going to learn about lighting. We're learning about materials, just like all of these big scene building lessons. But for this one, I really wanted to build out this really big feeling environment. So we're going to be building it in geometry nodes. We're going to be creating some assets around it. We're going to be making a ball, very kind of soccer ball looking thing, look like it's actually rolling on the ground, and we're going to have camera shake. Everything is going to loop. It's going to look really cool. Let's dive into it. So this is part one, which is going to be the modeling and the animation side. Well, almost all the animation. There's a little bit of material animation as well. So I'm going to go ahead and split my screen here. And then we're going to open up the geometry nodes editor here. I'm going to hit N. And then over here, we're going to go ahead and apply our mesh. And let's just name it GEO. Well, that's got a T in it. GEO. There we go. So we are going to first need a grid. So GRID, plug that there. And then we're going to, right here on the X, we're going to give it a scale of 20. And that's going to be, we're actually going to animate on the X this time instead of the Y. I don't know, just to switch it up, I guess. And then here on the Y, we'll give it a size of 8 to give it some width. Next thing we're going to do is, instead of instancing on a grid of points like we normally do by subdividing, we'll instance on like this grid. Instead, we are going to get a really cool node called distribute points on faces. And what that's going to do is just create a random assortment of points randomly placed. That is the point of it, and that's because I wanted to randomly instance a bunch of pillars and stuff here, so that's why I wanted to do this. I'm gonna bring my density relatively low, and then we're gonna get an instance on points. So we can instance something, of course, on those points, and that is going to be a cube. We'll get that cube, and we'll plug mesh into instance. And here we have our thing. So what I want to do is now randomly scale all of our boxes, and this is going to be the floor. So let's go ahead and get in a random value node, and we're going to plug this into scale and see how they look. They look like this. Kind of keep that mental image of this. Instead of float, which gives you a min max, I actually want to go to vector, and then we'll plug it in here. You get a little bit more detail, much more variety in your shapes, and it gives you a lot more control here. And so in this case, I want to randomize, I want to flatten them to make them look more like a floor. So something like this. And then we'll bring up the density on the floor, maybe something like this. And then you can go ahead and scale them like that. And now you have your floor. Now I want to get a bunch of pillars that are going up and down. So we're going to get a join geometry. So we'll get that join geometry here, and then we're going to get another instance on points. Instance on points, and get another distribute points on faces, and we're going to get just another set of distributing faces on top of this. And what that's going to allow us is a whole new set of objects. We'll plug the distribute points into the join geometry. I'm going to highlight it and hit G to move it to give us more space. And we're going to get another cube, which I guess we can just reuse this cube, plug it into instance, and then we'll get a new random value. So I'll just go ahead, duplicate this guy, and then I'll give them all a scale of 1 for now, and then plug that into the scale. And then this time we are going to actually make them a lot thinner and much taller and far less of them. So here we go. Now we have this, and then one fun little trick in geometry nodes is like, hey, I just want to completely duplicate something that I'm seeing. In this case, I want to get a duplication of the floor. So the way I'm going to do that, and I also actually want to move it up, so we'll get a transform geometry, which is the node that allows you to move things around. And then it will be this instance on, I think, let's see, is it? No, that's the pillars. Let's go down here. I think this instance on points, I believe, yes, corresponds with the floor. So it's this one. You can move things around to see which one it is. And the last node that all this affects is the instance on points. So that is the thing you'll plug into the geometry, plug that into the join geometry, and then if I were to go, hey, bring it up on the Z, we now have a duplicate of the floor. So that is how we duplicate the floor there. Now let's go ahead. I'm gonna move him over a little bit so we can have some space. I'm gonna move him over to the left, and then I'm gonna hit Alt-D and move him to the right. And now we have the inside of our scene. I do, however, want to make a couple changes. I want these pillars here, I want them to be taller. And then, of course, I want this floor to be taller as well. I want this thing to look and feel, you know, pretty grand. And I think this is probably pretty good. Pretty good spacing here. Now what I want to do is go ahead and get in the like middle piece that the ball is going to roll on. So we'll just move him over some more. We do want to keep it there because we're going to go back in just a second. So I'm going to hit Shift A and get a cube right here, and we're just going to call him, we'll call him Runway. Then I'm going to hit Tab. I'm going to do the move tool. I'm going to hold down Control and snap that anchor point to the bottom so when we scale it stays at the bottom. So I want to scale him down a little bit. And then because we created this grid to be 20 on the X, we will scale this cube. So we're going to click on the cube here, go here to the transform settings, and right here in the X, we'll type in 10. And he will also act as a guide when we're instancing this thing down the line. So now we have this. I'm going to hit Control A and apply that scale. And then we can just highlight it, hit M, New Collection, LOOP, like we always do. And then, let's see, go to the top. What would be the front? Well, that's the front. So I guess we'll go to the right. So we'll instance it this way. And I was hitting the tilde key to do all that craziness. So we'll go to the right, look at it. Then I'll hit Shift A, collection instance loop, and of course, holding down Control so it snaps. And then we are going to watch this middle portion to see where does it stop. So you can see it right there. There's a gap, so it's too far forward. Perfect. And then we'll do another one like that. Okay, so this is probably good for now. We have our scene. The last thing I want to do is add particles to be filling up the space so they can glow and look cool and have motion blur and all that fun stuff. So the way that is going to work is we're going to get a, let's go ahead and get a cube right here, this guy. And then we will plug him into the join geometry. And now you can see him show up right there. And then we want to also get a transform geometry, plug it there so that I can raise that cube. You can see him right here. Raise that cube to be in the middle, and then we can start to scale it. So on the X, of course, give it 20, and then you can eyeball the rest of it. So say, let's move it, zoom in here. So we'll eyeball it. You can see how they almost touch. You just get them to almost touch, something like this. And then, of course, this way, fill it to right about there. There we go. And then we'll convert it into a volume. So mesh to volume so that we can instance inside the volume. So now everything is a volume. So now we can do, we'll just type in volume here and distribute points in volume. We're just going to create a place for all of our points to exist. So of course we need a, I'll just go ahead and duplicate this guy, Shift D, duplicate, and then we'll get a icosphere. Icosphere, we will plug it right here into instance, boop, 2 subdivisions, bring that radius down. And then I like to bring the radius down first here so that when we start to bring it down here, it's a lot more controlled and you can be really incremental with it. And then of course you can bring that density up. I mean, you can have insane density, which that's incredibly heavy on my computer. So be very careful with this. But just a few, you know, it goes a long ways. So there we go. We've now built out our entire scene and it looks super cool. Next thing I want to do now is build the ball that's going to roll down the line here. So what I'm going to do is open up a new instance of Blender and then we're going to build it here. I just want to have a scene where there's nothing in it so I can have a clear space, clear brain, and you know, build this space. So what I want to do here is go to the mesh and go get an icosphere. And I'm only doing that so it's labeled, so I don't have to type it in, but we're going to replace it. So let's go to geometry nodes and click new, and we're going to get a icosphere, plug it there. We're going to give a 2 subdivisions. And then the first thing we're going to do is get a dual mesh. So DUAL, dual mesh node. I love the way it looks. And of course, in one of the lessons I showed, in order for the dual mesh to work, you need triangular faces. And you can see that's what we have. So it will immediately work once we plop it on there. Now we need to get a split edges node. And that's so that we can scale it so all these faces go smaller and we have gaps in between them. But the only way for that to work is to get a split edges node. Now we'll go ahead and get in a separate geometry node, because I want to subdivide some of these faces, but not subdivide others, so we get this really cool visual intricacy, whatever. So we'll get a separate geometry, and we will pick faces for that and get that classic random value node. I don't know if you can hear my cat jingling around. So we'll get our random value node and switch it over to Boolean just to get a simple slider here, and then plug that into selection. And, you know, we'll live with this. And what we'll do now is get in a join geometry node so we can join that separation back. And then we can, so now he's back, but now they're separated, which is nice. So if I go here to the wireframe view and I get in a subdivide mesh, it'll only subdivide a few of them, which you get that really cool variety. Now what we can do is get in a scale elements node, plug it here, and then bring it down so all these elements are scaled. But I want to actually, right here in the subdivide mesh section, we can do some cool things. So first off, this whole line, we also need to, where are we at? Split edges here, so that that new subdivision actually gets split as well. That looks nice. And then I want to put a dual mesh right here, and it's going to do a cool thing. So if I go dual mesh, dual that, and then keep boundaries. So you see what happens there? It keeps boundaries. You get this really cool thing. And then you can have a little bit of control. So say like, hey, I like how spaced out this big piece is, but I want the smaller ones that we just did this little thing to. I want to have more control over the scale of those elements. So you can just duplicate the scale elements and then bring these back in. And you can bring this back in a little bit and just kind of have some control over each side that you can then go ahead and extrude the mesh, plug it here, and then you can just kind of bring it in like this. So like that. And we have our ball. I definitely want to bring in the scale of some of these guys and then bring down the scale of this guy here. And then here in the modifiers, we're just going to go ahead and get a bevel node. And then just bring in that bevel however you want it to look. There we go. Now we have this really cool looking thing. Now we're not going to do a whole lot of special shading on the main scene. This is the only guy that's going to have any kind of cool shading. So I'm going to go here, click on this guy and the geometry nodes modifier in order to see the nodes. And we're going to get a set material node and put it there. All right, so he is now ready. And here's a fun thing. I don't know if you may have never done this before. You might not know it exists, but what you can do is you can hit Control-C on an object in a Blender scene, and then open up a new scene here. I'm gonna hit Control-V, and he is going to arrive. So now we have him, and now is probably a good time to save your project file. So he's now here, and scale-wise, I think I'm gonna scale him down a little bit, and then just kind of put him in an arbitrary position, something like this. All right, cool. We are here. Let's go ahead and get the animation portion of this ready to go. So first, let's go ahead and raise him out of sight, and let's get our camera first. So I think we're done with geometry nodes. I'm going to go ahead and close this window, and let's go ahead and get that camera. So we'll hit the tilde key, click, in this case, click right, and then we'll get a camera, and we'll bring him up a little bit. So here's our camera. And remember, it is 10 by 10. Well, it's 10 on the X. So we need to go here on the X and type in negative. Well, in this case, I guess we're going to do the positive 10 to make sure he's in the right spot. And then in my case, I remember in the design, I kind of brought the camera to the side. So let's make some space here, bring him here, and then bring him here so that he's actually going to exist like more down here, but we will get more into that once we actually animate the camera. So I'm going to keep it at 250 frames. My camera is sitting here at the positive 10, and I'm going to hit the tilde key. I'm going to hit the tilde key and go to the top. He can stop here. I actually want him to go to the next one. So we're going to click on the camera here. We're going to go over here, go back to frame 0, click on the keyframe, go to the end, and then I'm going to hold down Control, and we could stop it there, which would be the end of this one, but I actually want to go ahead and stop him there. So, which is going to be the negative 30. And then I'm going to go ahead and get that keyframe, and now we're ready. We'll add more down the line. But let's just test, does it loop? Yes, it loops. Okay. So now we've done that. We can go ahead and bring it down. Let's see. We'll do 90 here. We'll bring him up, and then we'll have him look this direction at the ball that's moving. And then we can go here to the focal length and make it wider, which means we can make him look, keep doing that, make him look farther up. There we go. We now have the scene animating. Now we are going to also add some camera shake. So we're going to go and I'm going to add some camera shake on all 3 axes. And so we're going to go ahead and just click and drag all of these guys. And then let's open up a new window, and we're going to get the graph editor. And then let's actually give him more space. We don't need to see too much. So if we go here, make sure you have your camera clicked now that you added your keyframes, and then we can hit this drop down to see X, Y, Z Euler rotation, and then don't play with the X location. Just these we're going to add in a new modifier, the noise modifier. And if you saw the kind of nebula looking scene lesson, then you already know what we're doing here. I'm going to hit the home button so I can just see this. If I look, oh no. So bring your scale to like 12. Bring your strength to like 0.1, maybe 0.05. Cool, he's doing his thing. Restrict that frame range, start at 1, end at 250, and then we'll blend in of 30. And then hopefully that loops. Let's check. Yep, okay, so that camera shake will work. Let's go ahead and go to the Y Euler. Oops, not cycles, we need our noise. Scale of 10, a strength of probably 0.08 maybe. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then restrict, start 1, end 250, 30, and then we'll do the same thing on this one as well. So I'll just kind of speed through this one because we just did it. Scale of 10, strength of 0.05. Pretty dramatic, but that is the game. All right, this should, cool. All right, yeah, we got some nice looping camera shake. Last thing we're going to do is to get this guy to roll and kind of, to actually make it look like he's legitimately rolling on. Now, you might think, well, let's just parent the ball to the camera and then animate a rotation to make it look like it's rolling, which is what we would normally do. The problem is we have camera shake, which means that ball will move around with the camera. And we want the ball to move the same exact way that the camera is, same distance, but no camera shake. So we need to get the ball to either, basically we have to add like the negative 30. So see how the camera starts at the positive 10 into the negative 30. We could like take his position and then add whatever the amount is. But for me, I like to do things visually so I know for a fact it's working. I'm not a very numerical, math-oriented person. So here's what I'll do. Instead of just adding the amount of distance numerically, I want to make sure it's visually working. So what you can do here is go ahead and get an empty and get a plane axis, and then we can just name him ball track, and then we can put him on the 10 of the X. So now we have this guy here, and then we'll just parent him. So we'll click on the ball, hold down shift, and then click on the ball. Oop. We will hit him again, hold down control, click on the ball track, empty, control P, and click object. And now when this guy moves right here, the ball will move with it. And so we can do the same thing. We'll start him on the 10 and end him on the -30. And so the ball moves with it. But of course, now he's just sliding on ice. He's not really rolling. And so we have to figure out how many rotations do we need to do to make this ball look like it's actually rolling. If you watch the kinetic animation lesson already, you know what we're going to do here. But we have to calculate rotations, and you can kind of do it by playing around with it. So he needs to go negative rotation. So I'm gonna click the keyframe, go to the end, and then I'm gonna type in 360 asterisk, which is time, and I'm gonna say maybe 5. So 5 rotations. Oh, of course, I forgot to do a negative value, 360 asterisk negative. Oops, sorry. Negative 360 asterisk 5. There we go. That'll give you a negative value, and I'm gonna hit I to initiate that keyframe. Oh, did I nail it on the first attempt? Let me check my original animation, see what I did. No, it needs to be 2160. So what is that? So he is rolling, but it might look like he's sliding a little bit. So what if we do negative 360 asterisk 6? That's 2160. Okay, so that's, there we go. Yeah, so I guess this is the original one that actually looked better when I originally made it. But that is sort of like, hey, figure out how many rotations needs to be. Sometimes it'll almost look like it's working, but it's not. All that fun stuff. All right, so we have it. We are done with the modeling and the animating portion of this lesson. We're going to end it here. And the next thing we're going to do is light it, shade it, render it. So see you in the next lesson.